All right. Here's the last question. This is from Alex. This is a good question too. Since you're in the future, quick measures in Power BI Desktop was a great idea and hasn't seen any new patterns since its release. I don't know that that's necessarily true. There were a few additions. Where do you see the fusion of DAX patterns and native quick measures?
I tried at the beginning to work with the quick measures, and I quickly dropped my effort because they are not implemented in a way that makes it easy to do what we want. And let me explain in 30 seconds. A quick measure requires some developer in the Power BI team to implement a dialog box to get the parameters for that quick measure. Guys, it doesn't work. It doesn't scale. It doesn't do anything. You cannot go along this path. And more importantly, the quick measure doesn't change the data model, whereas sometimes, or doesn't validate the data model, which is sometimes required to implement a template for a calculation or for a measure. So it's too limiting. But if instead of creating, so I'm very critical about the quick measures because it's, from my point of view, it doesn't work. And sometimes also it suggests some bad practice because of the quick measures that have been implemented, by the way. So, but my problem with the quick measures is the way they have been implemented. I would never have implemented quick measure the way they have implemented the quick measures. And because of that, there are many limitations and many problems that I already said this to Microsoft, don't worry, it's not the first time I said this. So I said, no, this doesn't work, it's not the right thing to do. And now that we have external tools, from my point of view, I'm not interested in investing in that, because at the end of the day, they have to implement this in Microsoft. So you can provide a suggestion, but they have to implement it. So any effort you make, you never know if they will be published or not, or if they will be published as you want. The only quick measure I proposed, they changed it in a way that was less efficient. And when I asked why, we said, oh, because this and that. And we said, okay, but you could have asked me because we could have implemented this in a different way. Now it is broken. So I don't like that feature.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. So, and Alex added something else. He's like, maybe it's time to revisit and rebuild it. And that's always a challenge, especially from a product perspective, because it's like, okay, do we invest time in that or do we invest time on the other thing that you're asking for?
Which is the topic of my post today. I wrote a blog post today because during the week, can I say that? Or we have to. Okay. So during this week, I look at it. I don't remember. I described it in the blog post today. Something that I have seen on Twitter, and on Twitter I said, okay, if you had 1 month of development time, would you implement an existing feature that exists in an external tool, just because this way you have the same feature that you already have in an external tool in Power BI, or would you implement a new feature?
Right.
Now, what happens in a few hours, I received a lot of feedback of many people that said, no, we want the existing feature in Power BI Desktop. Because this is because this way it is supported, it is from Microsoft, it is blah, blah, blah. And I was surprised because I said, wait a minute, everybody wants new feature. So once we have a workaround, who cares? We can move forward. And we're talking about the data modeling feature, not something for the end user, not something like the custom vision. We're talking about something only for the developers. I said, why? This is strange. So I created a survey and asked it to the same people, because the people who follow me are the same, and asked it to the people, what do you think? And the result was 50-50, which is still surprising to me, to be honest, but again, it's different, very different from the number of comments I received. And so someone said, oh, but you are getting the result from the people that follow you. Indeed. I mean, I had a different result before. Now, I'm not saying that this is the final ultimate survey. I'm just saying, look, sometimes the gut feeling is wrong. And I wrote a blog post today saying, most of the times, my gut feeling is wrong. Most of the times, when I think something, I look at the data, I was wrong. Not every single time, but most of the times. And I discovered something new. So because we work with data, we should get rid of our biases and look at the numbers. And if the numbers tell me that, okay, in this case, the numbers tell me that any choice will be wrong for 50% of the people. So I don't want to be a product manager in Microsoft that have to make this choice, because any choice you make is wrong for 50% of the audience.
Well, and I think Will Thompson commented as well. He was just like, "Oh, to be a PM, it's like it's always the struggle, right?"
And so you have to balance. And the thing is, if you look at the revenues, the final decision is, okay, what is stopping people today to adopt the product? And what is making people angry about the product? These are the two main drivers, because you have a subscription, so you need the people to pay every month or every year. If you think about this, as soon as you have a workaround, the prioritization of a feature immediately drops. Mm-hmm. It's inevitable. At the same time, when you show people that they can do something with an external tools, there will be someone that is angry because I want to do this in Power BI, but I cannot use this external tool for any reason. But what do? You measure how many of people are asking this feature. You say, okay, we have 10% of the people cannot use this feature. Okay, I'm sorry, but we have 90% of the people that can work without this feature, so we have to prioritize something else.
Yep.
It's the real truth, and you just have to look at the numbers.
Yeah, going back to when I was in support, not necessarily on a feature thing, but like if a customer was asking for a fix for a particular item, one of my colleagues had made a comment. He's like, "Hey, think about this: that if someone wants a fix, you're basically asking the product team to cut a check and reprioritize to address that fix instead of working on the other thing. If you have a workaround, then that makes it harder to, as Marco pointed out, if you have that workaround, it makes it harder to say, yeah, we're going to go invest in that item, as opposed to like, why can't you use the workaround? Like, why does that not work? And in some cases, okay. In other cases, it was like, look, the workaround's acceptable, so we'll go with it.
If I can add one thing.
Yeah.
There is a problem that many people are not aware of. The same feature built in DAX Studio could be 1 hour. I go to my PC, I write the code, and I deploy. I don't care about testing, languages, validations, legal, and you can have a long list of things.
Yep.
Any feature that Microsoft releases has to be approved by so many people for many different reasons.
Yep.
It's a huge cost. So the thing is, how many people are required to justify certain feature? If a feature is for developers only, maybe that a user interface in English is good enough. Maybe that you don't need the translation. Maybe that you don't need a nice looking user interface that also can satisfy all the, for example, accessibility requirements. Now, I am very, very, very aware of accessibility requirements, and we always pay attention to many details, but there are cases where they are simply good for legal reasons, but they are not effective.
Yeah.
And so if you're Microsoft, you have to comply with them. No, it doesn't matter. If they are not useful to a real person, they have to be compliant.
Yep.
But for an open source tool that is free, who cares?
Yep.
And so this reduces the friction to release new features. This is important. And this is also the reason why I said at a certain point, Microsoft should say, okay, development, open source tool, like they do for other things.
Right.
Why not in Power BI? That's my point of view.
Yeah.